Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Fishman, and my company is called Hope Organizers. And each month, I interview an expert in their field because everything in life involves organizing. This weekend is the 4th of July weekend. I'm wearing my red, white, and blue. And, if you're going to be having people over, that involves organizing. What is going to be the menu? What is the food you have to go buy to cook that food? What is the people that are coming? What time are they coming? All of that involves organizing. Are you having a barbecue? All of that involves organizing. And so I do this every month, like I said, and this evening, I have the pleasure of interviewing Scott McCafferty, who is the owner of Closet Solutions, which is located in Harbor City, California, which is near Torrance. And he has been in the business world for many years. He is a veteran of the United States Air Force. He has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Southern California and an MBA from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And he worked for 20 years in corporate America, where he was running many businesses in the corporate world. And about 18 years ago, he decided he wanted to own his own business where he could build it the way that he wanted. He could run it with his personal values, and he could treat customers the way that he felt that they deserved to be respected. And so he became the owner of Closet Solutions, which has been around for about 18 years now, I believe, Scott, right? And it is a family-owned business, and he services from Orange County all the ways up to the San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles, the greater Los Angeles area. And he does all kinds of closets. He does garage closets and bedroom closets and pantry closets and wardrobe closets and entertainment closets and everything. He's going to tell us more about that. And I wanted to turn this over to Scott. He's going to start by showing us a little video about his company. And go ahead, Scott. Thank you for being here tonight.
Absolutely. So as Janet said, my name is Scott McCafferty. I'm the owner of Closet Solutions, and I'm happy to be speaking with you guys here today. We'll start off. I'll show you a little video about the company to kind of give you guys a little bit of a snippet of what we do. So
Closet Solutions specializes in custom closets, garage cabinets, home offices, built-in cabinets, but we can really provide home storage solutions for pretty much any area of the home. As real estate becomes more expensive and houses in some places are starting to get smaller, storage is always going to be a need that people have. So what makes it easy to work with Closet Solutions is you don't have to know what the solution is that you need for your home. You just need to know the problems that you need to solve and the things that you need to store and how you use the space. And then we can work with you collaboratively to design a space that's going to meet those needs and make your space work just the way that you're hoping that it will. The process is pretty simple. First, you'll have a consultation with your designer where they will discuss your needs and assess what needs to be stored so that they can create a solution that's going to work for you. Then we take that design and we fabricate specifically to that design in our fabrication facility. And once that's done, we'll install it in your home so that everything fits just right. And then once the cabinets are installed, they're guaranteed for as long as you own the home. So on the day of installation, your installer will arrive. They'll lay out any protective blankets or tarps needed to protect your home, and then they'll get to work installing your job. Once the job is completely installed, they'll review the work with you to get final sign-off and make any necessary adjustments, and then they'll clean up and leave you to enjoy your cabinets. So unlike most of our competitors, Closet Solutions is a family-owned business. We're also veteran-owned. With most of the other competitors, you'll find that they are large multinational corporations that are franchises, and they just don't have the same flexibility to treat the customers in the way that we can. Throughout my life, I've always been kind of a builder by nature, and so I love to see the physical results of the work that we do, and the pictures really don't do it justice, right? To be able to show how a space transforms from something that's, either completely empty or maybe disorganized into something that's organized and beautiful, and to know that we had a hand in that is really satisfying. Closet Solutions serves the entire Los Angeles area, including the beach areas, the San Fernando Valley, the San Gabriel Valley, as well as Orange County. Schedule a free consultation today by clicking the link below.
All right, so that is, everybody could hear that okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a little bit about the company. I'll take you through a few slides just to kind of put a finer point on a few things, try not to be too repetitive here. So Closet Solutions. So we've been around nearly 20 years. As Janet said, we do custom closets, garage cabinets, home offices, laundry rooms, built-in cabinets, pantries. Pretty much the only type of home storage cabinets that we don't do are kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities. We work across materials and design styles, meaning we can do things in hardwoods or laminates and everything in between, paint grade wood. And we can serve, whether it's a very modern style all the way through something that's more traditional. And we serve customers' needs from high end to basic, right? So we'll do, just a basic reach-in closet, and then we'll do, these large wardrobe rooms that, are as big as my bedroom. What makes us different relative to a lot of companies in the space? We're locally owned. As Janet said, we're veteran owned versus a large national company, which gives us the flexibility to do things a little bit differently in terms of satisfying customers' needs and providing good customer service. We serve with the goal of 100% customer satisfaction, and we really want to treat people like we want to be treated. And importantly, we guarantee our work for as long as the buyer owns the home. Everybody that would touch a job or that touches a job at Closet Solutions is one of our employees. We don't use these subcontractors for installation or sales or design. So everybody that's involved is one of our employees so that we can control the quality and control the process. How it works, we went through this very briefly in the video, but it's basically starts with a basic consultation and measurement appointment and a discussion of, what the client needs. Then we come up with some preliminary designs, iterate on those designs until we hit it exactly right. And then it goes into fabrication and installation. So a pretty seamless process. This part is where, the client is involved up here.
Oh, somehow you went into mute, Scott. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Anyway, steps 1 and 2 are basically where the client is involved. Step 3 is, basically on us. Some examples of our work, because I think the photos, do a lot. So this is a project that we did up in Palos Verdes Estates. Actually, it was Rolling Hills. It was a male wardrobe. It was a huge project. That's just one photo. This was done out of paint grade wood. This one was in Brentwood, done out of stain grade wood. And this was another one down in the beach area, again, out of paint grade wood. Most of the jobs that we do for closets are done out of laminates, but we do very high-end work like this as well. We can do really nice reach-ins. This one's done out of paint grade wood. Believe it or not, this one was done out of laminate, so we can make that look really nice. We do garages as well. So this was a garage we did in Hermosa. This one was done also in Palos Verdes, actually. So we kind of tied the design of the cabinets and the coloring into kind of the broader design of the garage. And of course, we do laundry rooms, offices, pantries, and much more. Hard to make a pantry look really exciting on screen, so we don't have a lot of photos of those. And then, yes, of course, we do lots and lots of just regular closet systems where they're, fully drilled and fully adjustable and kind of configurable, so that they can change and evolve as the needs of the client change. I know this was something that had come up. I thought I'd proactively just talk a little bit about HGTV. So we were featured on 2 HGTV shows last year, Brother versus Brother, which was with the Scott brothers of, what was their original show called? I forget it. It's not Brother versus Brother, but it's something else. You guys will probably recognize this guy though, here on the left. And then we were involved in a pilot of a show called Rentervention. This is what we delivered for Rentervention. Rentervention was the concept was 2 long-term renters that had been in their spaces for 10 plus years, got a chance to work with the designer and really kind of transform the space. And so we got to work in the closets. as their rentals. They were relatively small walk-ins. You can see the female walk-in here. We also did a shoe and coat closet for her, and then the man's walk-in here as well. This is what we delivered for Brother versus Brother. So Jonathan Scott, this was his closet. This was, believe it or not, done out of laminate. It looks really, really nice, obviously. And what you can't see because it doesn't photograph well is we had a lot of lighting integrated into the cabinets. We had lighting integrated into the cabinets of Drew's closet as well. Again, this one was done out of laminate. These were enormous closets. Just a lot of fun to work with. So those were a few slides to just talk to you about what we do.
How did that come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened was we filmed Rentervention in December of 2019, and the Brother versus Brother was done in March of 2020. We were contacted for both shows around October, November of 2019, and they actually just found us online. So they just did Google searches for good closet companies in the area, and they had a need, and so we discussed both projects with them. And the Rentervention one was an easy one because it was a relatively small project, and we were able to get in and get out. The Brother versus Brother project, that was in Hancock Park, and they, oh gosh, those two houses, I think each one was, 5,000 square feet. They were enormous places, and they had a lot of spaces. And so originally we turned it down. And then they came back to us and said, well, they came back to us in February, and said, hey, we're filming in March. Do you want to do these closets? And what had happened was they had lined up another closet vendor who backed out at the last minute. And they said, hey, look, if you can do this, we'll feature your company prominently. You guys will come in and, this creates the drama of the reality show, and you'll come in and help us save the day. And it seemed like a good opportunity at that point, as opposed to just being, cast into something where we didn't know what the exposure was going to be. When they came back and they really needed us and said it was going to be integral to the storyline, it seemed to make a little more sense. And so that's how it happened too.
Interesting, thank you. I just did an unpack a couple weeks ago where someone had their whole home chosen for a TV show, and it was completely remodeled. And I went in, and it was gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous what they did, and I helped them unpack and put everything back into the kitchen.
Right.
So yeah, it must have been pretty exciting for you and your crew, huh?
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. There's a lot of kind of restrictions obviously placed around you when you're put on a show like that has international exposure. The way our logo could be shown on our shirts, we had to take our shirts off. So not our shirts off, but we had to wear logo-less shirts so that we could, conform with their guidelines around showing logos. And, at the end of the day, we weren't really sure how exactly we were going to be integrated into the story. And you have absolutely no control over that, right? You only have control over what you deliver, and then how they spin it is, really up to them. And so, we learned reality is not really reality, right? They kind of create a story and you fit into it in whatever way that you can, or whatever way that they need you to. And in this case, the need was pretty clear that they needed somebody to kind of come in on the white horse and save the day. So we thought it would be pretty positive exposure, but I've heard other stories where it can kind of go the opposite way. So it's fun to get the exposure. And then what I found out, it's a little bit less about the actual exposure on TV and more about the marketing angle of being able to say that, and the legitimacy conveyed by being able to say you were on an HGTV show and, you were selected by the Scott brothers. And actually, Jonathan Scott is talking to us right now about helping to do his personal closet, the house that they're building in with what is it, Zoe Deschanel in Brentwood. So it's kind of a fun thing. It was fun, and it was motivating for the staff for sure.
Good. Well, you gave us a little introduction to creating closets. Let's delve a little deeper now.
Okay.
So what is the process? If someone comes to you, calls you up and says, I want to build a custom closet in my bedroom. I have no idea what to do. Take us through the process, detailed process of designing and building a custom closet.
So, I mean, everyone is different, right? But where we like to start is with just an assessment of, the needs of the client, right? And their desires. So what, nothing, I think makes me more nervous in some ways than having a client that says, hey, I know exactly what I want. I've got a design for you. Here you go. Because, I mean, if somebody gives you the solution and it's not what they do for a living, you're not really sure exactly how it's going to turn out and whether or not it's going to satisfy their needs. So what we try to do is just start by going and doing a detailed consultation and saying, like, for instance, if it was you, you might call up and say, hey, Scott, I want a closet built. And so then we would talk to you and say, well, what do you mean? Like, what are your goals? Do you want us to build you the actual closet? Or are you looking for shelves and drawers and, organizational system within a closet that already exists? What are your goals? Are your goals to just get more organized or maximize space, or to make it look really beautiful? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? And then, try to understand whether or not they have reasonable expectations about what can be achieved, and, have a reasonable expectation of budget and all of those things. And then based on that, we'd say, okay, Janet, that makes sense. Let's send out a designer to you, right? And so then we'd make an appointment for a designer to go out and see you at the space. And sometimes it doesn't work out because, to be able to see the actual space because the house is under construction, or, they haven't moved into it yet. So you can see the space, but you can't see what they need to store or whatever. But the ideal process is we would visit you in the home, be able to see what you want to store, talk to the people who are going to be using the space, see the actual space, and say, again, dig more into, well, Janet, what is it you're trying to achieve, right? So space maximization. Tell me what it is that you want to store. How do you use the space? If it's a walk-in closet, how do you get ready in the morning? Like, what are the things that you want to do as you're getting ready, right? Are you wearing the same thing every day, or do you like to lay out your outfits and coordinate between, the pants and the shirt and the accessories that you might wear and the scarf? Do you lay things out so you can kind of drape it, or do you just kind of select your uniform and go, right? So we try to understand what needs to be stored, how they're going to use the space, and kind of what their goals are in terms of using the space. And then, then it gets into storage, right? Where it's like, okay, so you want to store shoes in your closet. Well, how many pairs of shoes do you have? And there typically ends up being a trade-off because people always have more stuff than they think they do, right? And they have less space to store it, right? And so it doesn't matter what size the closet is. You can go into a closet that's 12 by 12, and the person that has that will almost always have more stuff than will fit in a 12 by 12 closet. Or it can be a 5-foot reach in and you've got the same problem. People tend to expand their wardrobe and their collection to fill or overfill the space that's available, right? And so what we try to do then is have a conversation to say, well, look, there's limitations. We can't invent space. We can use the space better. But at some point, there's probably some trade-off between, how many shoes you want accessible in your closet and the amount of hanging that you can have, right? And so then we try to just optimize based on that. The best way to do that typically is you take an inventory, you lay out the design, and then you talk to them about what can fit and how it's going to meet their space needs. And so once the design is done, right, so then there's some iteration to go back and forth to adjust. And then the client, makes a decision. If they decide to go with us, then we'll sign a contract. We'll use those designs that we created for them to fabricate in the shop. And then once the fabrication is complete and the installation date arrives, then we'll go out and install it. So that's the basic process.
Great. So let's say one wanted to take a pantry. They had a pantry and they wanted to make it more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And they were thinking like maybe these pull-out drawers, instead of having just a shelf, maybe have a pull-out drawer. Are there other kinds of shelving besides a shelf that stays in place and a pull-out drawer? Are there other types of shelving?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's many different options, just with, and focusing specifically on a pantry for now, right? You can So there's just a static shelf like you talked about. There's a regular drawer, but then there's something called the pull-out shelf, which is kind of a combination of a drawer and a shelf, right? And so it's more open shelving with an open face that's not closed. And think of drawers that are, call it 3 inches high, that are separated by the same space that a shelf normally would be, right? And so what you often find with pantries, especially the reach-in pantries, is you've got 24 to 36 inches of depth, and you've got all this space back there, but you can't reach it because you've got that kind of netherworld of the cereal boxes and other cans that have fallen to the back that nobody sees until they move, and they're cleaning out the pantry, right? So then you can use these pull-out shelves, which allow you to access the back, right? And so that doesn't create more space, it just creates more functional space, right?
Yes.
Another option is baskets, right? And so baskets are popular with people who like to store things like, vegetables, right? You don't want vegetables to just be in an enclosed space, like potatoes and carrots and that sort of thing. You don't want those to be, or onions, I guess would be a better example. You don't want those to be in a refrigerator typically, and you also don't want them to be long-term in an enclosed space. You need something to breathe, right? And so the baskets with the canvas bags can be another good option. And again, those pull out so that you can access the space and the depth. And then there's other things that you can do, right? So there's vertical shelves, right? So think of a shelf that's like, I don't know, call it 18 inches tall like this, and then vertical slots where you can put platters and other things that typically take up a lot of horizontal space. But when you stack those platters, then how do you get to the one at the bottom without creating a big mess and pulling the other ones down on top of you? Well, that's where you can create these vertical spaces that utilize the space and again make it more functional. So that's the kind of thing that you can do for example in a pantry. Does that help?
Yeah, and that's often when I go out and I'm helping people organize, I'm always talking to them about utilize the vertical space. Use, because that isn't used, and that is there's a lot there that can be done with the vertical space. And
Absolutely.
One of the things you mentioned that I deal with all the time is people that have too many shoes, too many clothes. And I try to say to people, look, at the same way you wouldn't overspend your bank account, hopefully, you have to live within the means of your bank account. It's the same thing living within the means of your drawer space or your shelf space. You can't have more shoes or more clothes, because sometimes, and you see this too, is people expect that I can perform magic and create more space than that's there. And it's like, no, the only way we can create more space is to clear out some of these excess shoes and clothes.
Right.
At what point do you bring an organizer like myself in? Do you bring them in kind of before you would meet with the person? Do you bring them in if you see they've got too much stuff and you suggest, look, I wish, I hope you'll meet with an organizer first to pare down all of these excess so you can live within your closet space? Do you go in together? Can you tell us about how you work with organizers?
Absolutely. It's a great question. We work pretty very collaboratively actually with organizers. We're a member of NAPO, and we've been fortunate to form relationships with a lot of great organizers through that organization. So typically the way it works, right, is, well, not typically, there's no typical. We do referrals both ways, right? So it's probably more likely, it seems like, that an organizer calls us and says, hey, we've got, this is the situation. And at the end of the day, this person is going to need to cut down the stuff that they have and organize it better. And but they're also going to need a space to organize it into. And so it's probably a little bit more often that an organizer calls us and they've already got a plan for how they're going to approach the organization. And so then we'll go in and, we'll work with their client as well as them, and, kind of together as a team, and basically say, all right, so what is it we're trying to achieve? I know we've got this much stuff and we're going to try to get it to this much. What are we planning for, right? And how do you think the needs for that, space is going to change over time, or is it, right? And so based on that, we'll, go through that same consultation process that I described to you, but we'll use both the organizer and the client together to kind of gain input. and just kind of go, collaboratively through that process. And then again, when we share the designs, we'll share them with both the organizer as well as the end client, so that we can, make sure that we're coming up with something that's going to work, well in the organizational scheme that's being created. Because sometimes the end client knows exactly the way that it's going to go, and sometimes the organizer has a vision, and the client is basically just kind of saying, hey, take me to the end. Here's the end state that I want to get to. I don't know how to get there. And so we're flexible to kind of work through it that way. On the other hand, it is fairly common that people will call us and say that they need help, and then we go out there and we see, for instance, that there's let's say there's a garage and you can't even walk in it, and so us putting cabinets in a garage that's stuffed to the gills and has stuff stacked out to the front doesn't make any sense, because that's just going to be more stuff, and it doesn't really help the situation. And so in that side of in that case, we will typically say, hey, you know what, I think you need to work with an organizer first. Here's a list of some great organizers. Maybe you can make some progress. And once you've kind of gotten to a place where you understand what it is that you want to keep, then we're happy to come back out. Because in a lot of the cases, you can't even get in there and take the measurements that you would need to be able to create the cabinets in the first place. When it's a little bit more manageable and it's not so overstuffed, but there is still a need for an organizer, what we'll typically do is, again, go through the consultation first with the client and talk to them about what their needs are, and then start to create a space. And then we'll make a referral to a professional organizer. And we kind of at that point lead it to the client to say, look, here's some organizers you can work with. If they then bring them back into the fold, we're happy to kind of integrate them into the process, like I talked about, at the beginning, just as if the referral to the client had come from the organizer in the first place. So that's the way we tend to approach it.
And what about working with interior decorators or interior designers? Do you work with them closely, or mainly they find you, or the client has a decorator? Like, how does the process work with it?
It's really the same thing. So we work with interior designers all the time. I mean, I think when you think about the broader partners that we work with people that we work with a lot in terms of, not end consumers, would be professional organizers, interior designers, general contractors, architects, those type property developers, right? Those types of folks that are having a recurring either business that they're pursuing that has a need for somebody, a company like ours, or people who have clients, repeated clients, like an interior designer or professional organizer that have a common need for something like what we do. And so when it comes to an interior designer, again, the same process as with the organizer tends to apply. And well, I should say that's the way we tend to approach it. There are some some professional interior designers that want to be very involved in the process, right? And say, hey, this is the design of the house, and I really want to get involved in what the design of the closet looks like, so that everything's very cohesive, even in through the closets. And in that case, then we'll work very collaboratively with the designer as well as the client. And then there are interior designers that come to us and they just, they treat us like their go-to client closet company, because they don't really want to deal with the closets, right? They want to deal with all the pretty spaces out in front, the kitchen and the baths and the living room. And they just say, you know what, Scott and his team will take great care of you, work with them, right? And so it's it's kind of 50-50 on that one, whether it's collaborative or they just turned it over to us because they don't want to deal with it.
Now, do you, I'm sure you've had clients and maybe some of the people in the entertainment industry that have relocated to other states. Do you ever travel? Do you have partners with closet designers in other states that you work with? Or have you ever flown your crew out to other states to remodel?
No, we don't. I mean, it's just not a business that really lends itself to that. I mean, we have, a 7,000 square foot fabrication facility with, 6-ton equipment, that it really doesn't lend itself to travel. And then the cost of of traveling, and taking all of the materials across tends to just be pretty cost prohibitive. Most people, there's a lot of good cabinet companies and closet companies throughout the country. So if somebody moves, it has happened where somebody said, "Oh, I love the closet you did for me," and they can send us some architectural renderings, and we can, for a fee. And we've done this for one celebrity client. It was actually an athlete when he got traded to another basketball team. But it's very infrequent. It's not really the way the business tends to go.
Is there a minimum square footage or space that your company will work in or work on?
No, there's no minimum square footage. I mean, we tend to limit the geography so that we can serve most jobs, pretty economically. We don't, so we don't want to travel so far that we have to turn a lot of jobs away. And we also don't want to charge, trip fees and exorbitant fees of that nature to compensate ourselves for, for the time spent on the road. So with the areas that we serve, we can do pretty much any job of any size in terms of square footage. The only thing is, I think when you start to think about a job that's less than, so one guy can typically install a $4,000 job in a day. So when you start to get less than a quarter of a day, call it $1,000 job, it tends to be something that we'll do it from time to time, but we're very selective about those jobs that are less than $1,000, just because it tends to be, less economical. You end up spending more time on the road and setting up and cleaning up than you do actually doing the job, and that's not what we want to charge people for.
Does your company fabricate everything yourselves, or do you buy anything from suppliers?
Yeah, we fabricate almost everything. So we fabricate the cabinets. So there are a few select components that, certain door styles and drawer face styles that we don't fabricate in-house, because there's large companies that can do it much more economically than we can. But we fabricate, the sides, top, bottom, shelves, toe kicks, bridge shelves, backing, all of that in-house. We fabricate most of our drawer boxes. So it's really only select door and drawer faces and select types of dovetail drawer boxes that we don't fabricate. Everything else is ours. And so one of the reasons we do that is because we offer that lifetime warranty for as long as the customer owns the home. And we can only do that if we're fabricating it out of materials that we understand, using methods that we know work. Right. So we try to keep as much close hold, and then just use a few select, very high quality suppliers for the things that are, that are a little more specialized.
So you mentioned materials. What do you find? So there's wood, there's laminate, there's press board. What other types of materials are people using?
Well, so when you talk about press board, so let me just start with a little bit of, kind of basics here. Some people call press board, right, particle board, or some people call it press board, or some people call it composite. That's really a descriptor of the core of the material, right? So you can have a core that is solid wood, or a plywood, or a composite core of a variety of different types. One common one would be particle board, and then the outside can be a laminate or a veneer, or it could be solid wood. So you got to kind of tend to separate the two to a degree, because almost all cabinets, and it's hard to find examples of cabinets nowadays that are done out of solid wood. Almost all furniture and all cabinets are made out of a veneer, because it's a much more stable product. And a veneer is just basically a thin layer of the natural wood on the outside of some sort of core, be it a composite core or a plywood core. And then the other alternative, I guess, well, there's really three varieties. When you talk about wood, it tends to be a veneer on some sort of core. Then you can talk about paint grade wood, which tends to be a composite core and without a veneer that gets painted. And then the third option tends to be a laminate, again, typically with a composite core, but it can also have a plywood core. So those are really the three varieties that you have. natural veneer, laminate, or paint grade wood. We work in all of those, and they come in a variety of different colors and styles. So when you think about say a veneer can be anything. It can be walnut, walnut, pine, cedar, maple, ash, birch. There's just hundreds of different varieties of wood that can give you really, really varying looks, that can be either stained or just clear coated. We work in all of those. We work in laminates. We, as a company, carry 30 different colors of laminates, standard, but we have access to hundreds more if somebody really wants to go and choose a color that's really out there. And then paint grade wood really is just a stable surface for painting, and so it tends to be what's called MDF, medium density fiberboard, which is a composite product, but it's really stable in terms of painting, or it can be a paint grade plywood. And again, we work in those as well. And then once those are painted, the finish can, look like whatever you want it to. So those tend to be the three categories of materials that we use.
Thank you. How during this COVID year did you operate the business, or for people that are still a little being cautious about letting people into their homes, how are you handling things during the COVID?
Absolutely. So, there at the beginning, it was really strange, right? So I remember coming home on, I think it was a Wednesday, and watching, Gavin Newsom's, press conference that said everything was shut down. And I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And so we were shut down for about a week, trying to figure out exactly how we were going to come back, because we really wanted to come back in a way that was going to protect our employees and our clients, and still be able to operate the business in a sustainable way. So we've always taken COVID very seriously. And what we did originally, a week after the original shutdown, we came back just with virtual consultations. And so that meant that, we would start out with, the designer doing a Zoom meeting with the client, and talking to the client again about doing the same consultation that they would have done in person, but just doing it over Zoom or over FaceTime. And then we would have the client do, if the client had an architect or a general contractor involved, so that we had blueprints, then we would use the blueprints. But more often than not, what it meant was, I would be telling you, Janet, as the client, show me your walk-in closet. Okay, great. If you have a tape measure from the left wall to the right wall. What number do you get? Okay, now measure from the front to the back. Okay, great. Now you have a door there. How wide is the door? How far is that? How far from the left-hand wall is that door, right? And so we would take those measurements, and that was typically enough for us to design to. Didn't have everything right. There's oftentimes light switches and outlets and other obstructions in walk-in closets and in reach-in closets that we couldn't possibly know about during that design phase. But typically what we would do, it was enough for us to be able to create a design concept and basically be able to use the information from the consultation to then start to put, pen to paper, so to speak, and create a design so that people could see a two-dimensional and as well as a three-dimensional rendering of what their closet could look like, and visualize what the space would look like. And then, if the client was interested past that, then, what we did was we would send out one of our installers to measure the space, right? And so they would take the measurements for the space. They're in those spaces all the time, so they're better at measuring than any designer that I've got. They would take the detailed dimensions, give that feedback to the designer so that they could make any adjustments that were necessary based on the specific measurements and the things that they discovered during an on-site, visualization. And then we could adjust the dimensions, and then the client can make a decision. That's what we did almost exclusively for the first month, I'd say. As things kind of went forward, people started to, people were still being very careful, and we did a lot of virtual consultations, even up to just a month or so ago, right? But as a month turned into 6 weeks, and 6 weeks turned into 8 weeks. There were some people that became more comfortable, right? And so for those people that were comfortable, if we had a designer who was comfortable, then we would send them out. And we would only do so, we would always make sure that it was claimed, but it was the best that we could do. We would talk to the designer, or sorry, not the designer, the client, about what the environment was like. Is anybody living in the home? Okay, who's living in the home? Have they had any exposure to COVID? Have they had any symptoms themselves? And in the rare instances where, that came back as a negative, then we would say, well, great, well, I'm sorry, we can't come into the home right now because, your son's experiencing symptoms. I'm sure it's fine. When those symptoms clear up, we'd be happy to go on site. Perhaps we can start with a virtual consultation. So that's the way we started. And over time, obviously, we got better and better at that process. We got really good at virtual consultations, and we got more and more people were comfortable as well. We throughout the entire time, we put in place policies and procedures to protect people. So social distance in the beginning, for the first month, the only people who were allowed to work in person were those that needed to work in person, because you can't install a closet virtually, right? And you can't make a closet virtually. So those people had to go in, but the designers didn't, and I didn't, and the administration didn't. And so, we tried to keep everybody safe by minimizing the occupancy in the office and in the facility and limiting it to just those people that needed to be there. We kept all the doors and windows open. Everybody used masks all the time. That was mandatory. We pared down our installation crews. Typically, we would often send out 2 people on a job or more, depending on the size of the job. When we could do it safely, we only sent 1, right? So it was better to send 1 guy to do a job over 2 days than it was to send 2 guys to do the same job in 1 day, right? And so we were doing those types of things to kind of minimize interactions. We had professional cleaning services that would come in and sanitize. We sanitized ourselves, commonly touch surfaces on a daily basis. So we had all kinds of policies and procedures in place, but a lot of it really hinged around virtual consultations and only going out on site when there was a reason to do so. Whereas most people that call up and say, hey, we'll walk in closet, if they have reasonable expectations, we'll send somebody out. And at that point, we have no idea how interested they are. They have no idea how interested they are in us. We waited till we got to the point where we could say, here's what we could do for you. Here's approximately, here's a good number of what it's going to cost, and here's what it would look like. Are you interested? And if they said yes, then there was a reason to go out.
You mentioned 2D and 3D, years ago, before computers and computer programs, I guess you just had to draw with the architectural type of plans.
Right.
Nowadays, interior designers are often using the 2D and 3D computer programs, and they can send that to the client to show what it's going to look like. Do you use that a lot as you deliver designs?
Absolutely. We use it, almost exclusively. There are closet companies that draw things by hand. And they do that because it's quick and it's easy and it's a cheaper way to do things. We like to go the extra step to actually create a computerized rendering and a 3D rendering so that people can see what it is that they're going to buy, because it's really hard to visualize a space. Even when there's a 2-dimensional drawing, it's hard to kind of see what that's going to look like unless you can see it in a perspective, right, with
different angles
and potentially with clothes lined up in the closet, so you can really see a little bit more how it's going to live. So we take heavy use of that.
Great. I have one more question, and then we'll open it up to the listeners.
Sure.
Let's say you go into a space and there's already a custom design there. The closet already has its custom design. Your company did it 20 years ago, or it's a new buyer that's bought the home and is moving in, and they want a fresh new design. What might you do in a situation like that?
Well, it really doesn't start out any different than, one where they don't have a design, right? We'll go in and try to understand their needs, and measure the space and talk to them about In the case of, an existing design, well, how have your needs changed? Like, how do we need to modify this? And so, then if it's so by and large, we don't modify other people's cabinets, right? So if somebody's got something that's been installed, every cabinet maker makes things with slightly different materials, with slightly different hardware, using slightly different techniques. And so, it gets you into trouble when you try to modify somebody else's cabinet. If you're not 100% sure exactly how it was made, right? You could end up ruining something that, that didn't need to be ruined. So some people will glue their cabinets together. And if you think, well, they've only been attached with screws, and you go in there and try to unscrew it and then try to separate it, you'll end up ruining the cabinet, right? And so, so it's just best to work with things that exactly what it is, right? Because again, we give a lifetime warranty for everything that we install. And so if we're installing on top of or modifying somebody else's cabinets, it's hard to provide that warranty and that assurance that it's going to last the way that you want it to, because it's hard to know what's there. And so that's why we don't typically modify other people's designs. So typically, we'll go in and talk to them about how much their needs have changed. And then, we can go through and we'll provide a rendering and a design and a quote and basically say, look, to get exactly what you're wanting, here's what it would look like and here's how much it would cost. And then at the end of the day, if it's worth it for them, then we can take out the existing cabinets and put something new in. But it's best to just leave that trade-off to them, because, I don't know how important, and how much it's worth for somebody to be able to store 20 extra pairs of shoes, right? Where I would draw the line in my calculus is going to be different than the client. So we just kind of try to provide them with the information and the alternatives so that they can make a decision. If it's a design that we've done, then it becomes a cabinet installation that we've done, it becomes a lot easier because we know exactly what we're dealing with, and we can go in and assess again their needs, and then start to talk to them about what's the most economical way to kind of satisfy their new needs, right? So for instance, if they have a walk-in closet and it doesn't have anywhere for shoes, but now they want to have a place to store 40 shoes, well, then we can talk about, hey, without completely tearing everything out, you could sacrifice these two sections and we could build a shoe rack here. And what you would lose would be this much hanging and this much shelving for sweaters, but you'd be able to gain 40 pairs of shoes. Is that something that's worth it to you? And so we can just talk through those trade-offs and again, do the renderings and the costing so they know what their choices look like.
Wonderful. Well, I want to open it up. Does anyone have any questions? If you would like to ask Scott a question, please unmute yourself and ask away. Or you can even put it into a chat if you prefer, and I can.
So I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Marcy.
So I'm a client of Janet's, and she's helping me wade through the variety of things I have. So in my bedroom closet, I've got everything from my shoes, my handbags, sweaters, hanging stuff, jewelry. And then on the bottom of the closet, we don't drink, but we don't have a place to store liquor. We don't have a liquor cabinet or anything like this. So I've got bottles on the floor and pictures, photographs that have yet to be ordered. So like there's too many different types of things in that one closet, whereas the closet in my den, which serves as an office, also has table linens mixed with photographs, mixed with books, mixed with office papers and office supplies. So how do you even start without tearing everything out of the closet, all the items, try to separate them into categories? And that's where the big picture is where I'm struggling.
Right. Well, typically, when it comes to a challenge like that, we might get a professional organizer involved, right? To basically be able to say, well, what's the vision for the space? And, is there going to be an editing of the stuff to kind of pare it down? And if so, what are we going to be left with? And then what are going to be the best places to store the bottles and the picture frames and the linens? Did they all go in the master closet, or or where do they go? If we don't have a professional organizer in mind, then that's a conversation that we would end up having to start with the client. And, you know, our folks can come forward with ideas, but at the end of the day, it tends to be, you know, we have to take, you know, because we're not professional organizers, right? We provide the context and the structure in which to organize. We kind of need to take the cue from somebody, be it the client or the professional organizer. And again, we can use some probing questions to kind of lead to a certain lead in a certain direction, but we kind of have to start with the idea of what are we trying to accommodate? And we do combination spaces all the time. The other day, somebody called up and said, I have a combination master bedroom walk-in / linen closet / laundry room. Okay, well, that's what we have to work with. So now we just have to decide, right? How are you going to use the space? Are you going to fold the clothes in the laundry room? Do you need a hamper here? Like, what is it that we're trying to accommodate? Are you going to keep all the laundry supplies, the soap and the, you know, the fabric softeners and all of those things in the closet? Or is it really just going to be a stackable washer and dryer and everything else is going to be linen / closet? So we can lead people through that discussion, but when it becomes really thorny, that's when we need somebody to kind of take the lead to basically either the client say, well, look, this is what I want to design to, or a professional organizer to say, to kind of help lead that process and kind of take it from this amorphous thing to something that's concrete that we can you know, design to. Because without that understanding of what uses and storage we're trying to accommodate, you're kind of left with, you know, just designing to what you think might be the use of that space. And what I think might be the use of the space isn't necessarily going to fit your needs. And so that's why we need somebody to kind of step forward and basically say, you know, here's what we're going to do with this space, and here's what we need to accommodate, and here's how we're going to use it. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you.
Nice.
Any other questions? Okay, well, next month in July, I'm going to be interviewing a photographer who's going to talk about what you need to do to get organized for a photo shoot. And it can be a photo shoot that you're getting professional photos taken for your website, for your business card, or it could be a family gathering. It could be for a wedding or whatever. And then in August, my interview guest is going to be people who help. If you've got a senior that needs to be moved into an assisted living, what are the different things that you need to look for when you go out and are looking at assisted facilities and that kind of help? So those are some of the upcoming speakers that I have lined up. And I want to thank you all for joining tonight. And I want to thank Scott for his wonderful information, and MJ, who runs the webinar. And have a good 4th of July weekend, everyone. And I hope to see you next month.
Scott,
you.
that was
Thank you,
amazing.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yay, on the University of Chicago Business School. My husband went there.
Oh,
too.
that's great. It's a great